For Lesson 8, we want to talk about some terms. Variable and expression and equation are three terms that we need to be familiar with in algebra. A variable is really the unknown in the expression or the equation, and the unknown is represented by what you would recognize as letters. So you might want to think about the variable as being the unknown, or it's going to be the letters in the problem. An expression is very easy to tell from an equation, and these two are pretty important that we can differentiate between. An expression has no equal sign in an expression, and we always simplify. They'll tell us to simplify to get the answer to an expression, and an equation does have an equal sign, and our directions are going to say solve. So the nice thing to know also about the equation is, since it has an equal sign, it also has two sides, and that's going to be very important later on. The two sides to an equation allow us to do special things to the equation that we cannot do if we only have an expression. Well, let's take a look at some expressions that are in the four examples below, and let's plug in some numbers that they've given us for the variables. They're telling us that the x variable is equal to the number 2, the y variable is going to equal 5, and the z variable is going to equal 3. So what they're asking us to do when they say evaluate is sort of like simplify, is we're going to plug in for each of those letters, we're going to plug in the value, and then we're going to see if we can come up with, do the math and see what the answer is. The first one, 7 plus 3z, would be 7 plus 3 times whatever z is worth, and z is worth 3. Now, we have to follow order of operations to simplify this, so we have to do multiplication first. We're going to say 7 plus 9, and of course 7 plus 9 is equal to 16. Example 2 says y cubed minus z. Well, y is equal to 5, so we want to say 5 cubed minus, and remember the minus is in our expression, so it doesn't come from the value of the variable in this one. We're going to say minus the value for z, and z is equal to 3, so it would be 5 cubed minus 3. Now we know we would do exponents first in this case, so we're going to say 5 times 5 is 25, times 5, well, I happen to know that one, that's 125. Think quarters when it's multiples of 25. You would have 5 quarters would be $1.25. And 125 minus 3 would be 122. For example 3, we've got a fraction. The 6, of course, has no variable. But we're going to say 3 times x would be our numerator. And that's over our denominator of 3. You see, I'm just plugging the numbers in. Now, to simplify that, I will say 3 plus 3 times 2 is 6 over 3. And now I'm going to do the division, which is a fraction is just a division problem. I've really got 6 plus 6 divided by 3 is 2. And, of course, 6 plus 2 would equal 8. For example 4, I've got to work inside parentheses, and then I'm going to raise it to a power, so it looks like they're giving me a little bit of work to do. But first, I have to plug in my numbers, my variables. So I'm going to say 4 times y, and y is equal to 5, plus 3 times z, and z is equal to 3. And then all of that is going to be squared. I work inside parentheses first. I will say 4 times 5 is 20. Plus 3 times 3 is 9. Multiplication inside the parentheses comes before addition, remember. And now I'm going to say my answer here is 29 squared. Well, I can't do that in my head, and you shouldn't try to do these things in your head. You need to get used to doing them the long way, because you won't have a calculator on the test. So let's say 29 times 29. 9 times 9 is 81. Put down my 1, carry my 8. 9 times 2 is 18. Plus 8 is 26. I'm going to put a 0 down because I'm multiplying times the 2 that's in the tens place. 2 times 9 is 18. Carry my 1. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. Now I add these two, and I have 1 plus 0, 6 plus 8, 14, carry a 1. 1 plus 2 is 3, plus 5, 8, and there's my answer, 841. Now take a look at translation. Remember, the handout is for translation is in Lesson 1, and you should probably keep it handy so that you can refer back to it. A number less 30 is what we're talking about here, a number less 30. A number is usually represented in algebra by variables. So we would say x or n, and all of these I'm going to use x for the variable. And less is subtraction, of course. So a number less 30 would be x minus 30. The reason we can stay with the order of the problem is because less does not translate backwards. Next, example 6 says a number, which we will say x is our number, times 20. Now in algebra we never look at it like that. Usually what we have is we'll put the coefficient in front of the variable and it'll say 20x. So if you have x times 20 you could write it that way, but the more common way is to write it as 20x. Next, example 7 says the quotient. Remember, quotient means division. We stay with the order of the problem. The quotient of 20 and a number is the first part that we have to handle. Let's handle that before we look at decreased by 3. The quotient of a number and 20 would be 20 divided by a number. Remember, same order as in the problem. Decreased by means subtract, and the number we subtract is the number 3. Next, we say 20 subtracted from. Subtracted from is one of those red flags. It should send up a red flag because you have to translate this one backwards. So what we put first is whatever follows subtracted from. In other words, what's coming first is twice a number. So I'm going to say twice a number is going to be 2 times the number, which is x. And then I'm going to say subtracted from means subtraction, and whatever came in front of subtracted from goes next, and that's 20. 2x minus 20 is our expression. All right, number 9, the product, which means multiplication of a number and 7. Well, we would say the number x times 7, and of course we don't write it that way. We write it as 7x. Now, example 10 is 20 decreased by twice a number. Now, decreased by is subtraction. Twice a number, however, is multiplication. So we're going to have to say twice a number is really going to be 2 times that number, or 2x. I can write 20 decreased by twice a number. And those are my translations.